I'll introduce myself real quickly to get started here. My name's Colter Pence. I work on the Flathead National Forest as a Wilderness, Wild and Scenic Rivers and Trails Program Manager here. But I'm not the featured person of interest. This is a panel discussion. I've prepared a few questions, and I'll alternate between checking in on the questions I've prepared and any questions or prompts that the audience has put into the chat. I want to set a little context around this leadership panel discussion and why this is timely and a great place to find ourselves. The last 2 days, we're bringing in on the third day and the closing day for Wilderness Skills Institute. The last 2 days and today, we have a number of things that are focused and centered around leadership. The first day we had a plenary session that was checking in on leaders' stance and habits, this sort of sense of the bones and the muscles around being a leader in wilderness and conservation work, or excuse me, wilderness, wild and scenic rivers, trails, conservation work. And so sort of this framing of how you be as a leader and how you can do as a leader. Yesterday, we had an engaging session from Shannon Stober, who shared with us about situational leadership, the idea that there's different ways of being a leader depending on the situation. You may be a directing leader, you may be a supporting leader, you may be a partnering leader at times, depends on that situation. We've also had tracks that are specific in leadership in their own sort of specific way. Incident leadership, improving communication. We also just closed a session on diversity. That's leadership work right there. There's an upcoming session on addressing harassment in the whitewater industry, whitewater rafting industry. That's leadership work, engaging with that discussion too. So we have lots of sub-sessions, track sessions that are hitting on elements of leadership as well. Right now, we're continuing that theme by having a panel discussion with a number of people, several people who I personally uphold and honor and look up to as leaders in the work that we all do together. And I'm looking to checking in with this panel on questions and their questions I have around leadership and hearing their thoughts on that. Again, I want to welcome our audience to share questions that they may have in the chat so we can check in on that. Let's start with our introductions here. I'm going to go alphabetically. I'd like to introduce Kaitlin Varona. She is the Executive Director with the Southern Appalachian Wilderness Stewards Organization, a leader in wilderness stewardship work for sure. Kaitlin and I, also a little known thing, we went to the same elementary school in Nevada, of all things. Welcome, Kaitlin. I also want to introduce and welcome Leanne Marten. She is the Regional Forester with the U.S. Forest Service, specifically the northern region, that is North Idaho, Montana, and a little bit of Dakotas. And Leanne is also formerly the director for the Forest Service for Wilderness, Wild and Scenic Rivers. So she's had a professional hands-on work with wilderness and wild and scenic rivers work, in addition to being the regional forester currently. Next up, I would like to introduce Risa Shimoda. Risa Shimoda is the Executive Director of the River Management Society. I admire Risa's work, and she's been influential in guiding where I am in my work with river work as well. And last, I want to introduce Tim Love. I'm not sure if Tim has joined us just yet. And Tim is currently the coordinator for the Montana Forest Collaboration Network. This is a group that connects partners and organizations working on land stewardship conservation work in Montana. Tim is also a retired district ranger from Montana, and I think is perhaps at a place to reflect on the full arc of his career, both as an official formal leader in the Forest Service, but also now as a community leader through this collaborative network. So with that introduction, I think I'd like to get us going here. Oh, Tim is on. Thank you for sharing that. Welcome, Tim. Okay. The first question I want to ask, and again, I'm going to keep an eye on the chat here for some more questions, but my first question here is, over the last couple of days, we've heard the phrase leading from where you are. I think that has a sense of you don't need to only be a leader by title or by an authoritative type of position, that you can lead from where you are. And what I wanted to ask was, what does this look like or mean to you when you see people leading from where they are in the work that you do? Perhaps we'll just get started and run that alphabetical for the first run through. Let's check in with Kaitlin and Leanne and then Risa and Tim on that one. What does leading from where you are look like to you and mean to you?
Yeah, thank you so much, Colter. I think this question and kind of my answer has a theme throughout many of my thoughts when thinking about leadership, but I really strongly believe that you can be a leader at any point in your life, at any position, whether you have folks under you or not. And I think a lot of it looks like stepping up, raising your hand, even to answer a question, even to volunteer to put things away, even small things, being the one to step up and say, hey, I'm here to help. I'm willing to do that, is a form of leadership, kind of leading from the front, even if again, you don't have folks under you, being willing to take that extra time to learn some protocols or to learn a framework a little bit better, a little bit sharper, so that when folks are posing questions, you're able to maybe help, and peer-to-peer helping. And so I think a lot of that, some of those are what it looks like to lead from where you are, to work hard and to step up, even in small ways.
And I'll build on that, because I totally agree with everything you just said, Kaitlin, and I'll come at it from maybe a little bit different perspective. I also see leading from where you are, maybe being the one that is the convener, the one behind the scenes also that is listening and being really curious, humble curiosity, asking questions, perhaps very respectfully bringing up some tough issues into a room so we can have the right dialogue, helping others find their voice, not necessarily always having to be your voice, but helping others find their voice, and leading through actions, being respectful, honoring everybody else's space, honoring the fact that everybody has a voice and has an important voice, and we want to make sure that we're honoring the diversity around us. So sometimes it's being quiet and enabling others and encouraging others to have that voice. So I see it kind of from like what you said, Kaitlin, then there's the maybe behind the scenes leading from where you are as well, and a combination thereof.
You guys have given great responses. I don't think I can do better, but a slightly different perspective from in my background. I grew up, or I went to school to be a product designer, engineering product designer. And from when I was little, I wanted to be a choreographer. So I took dance lessons, but I didn't want to be like a ballerina. I wanted to be a choreographer. So looking at problem solution, what is a need, and what are the resources you have in you, either your experience or skills, and what's around you. So identifying all the things you can apply to either create something new or to adjust something that's not perfect is another approach to it. And if you think about what a choreographer does, the ultimate wonderful outcome is to see a bunch of people do something well and then have people applaud, or have, it be a successful performance, if you will. So looking at that kind of community orientation for doing something better, doing something new, changing something that's not going well.
Right on, Risa. Let's check in with Tim about what does leading from where you are mean or look like when you see that happening?
Sure. For me, the important thing is whatever you do it well. See the big picture, know how you fit into that. After high school, I served in the military, and that's one of the two great lessons I learned. And that was one of them, that, they helped us understand that we're a part of something larger than ourselves. And no matter what your mission or your responsibility was, it was part of something big. And your role, you had an important role in helping that mission be accomplished. So understand how you fit into that and do your job well. And that has an influence on others.
Okay, thank you for getting us warmed up there with that key question. Like I said, we've heard it a couple of times embedded in things today, or the last few days, leading from where you are. So I think that was a good one to start out with. I don't see a question in the chat yet, so I'll pick down my list here a little bit. What do you wish you had known about leadership, the concept of leadership, when you were starting out in your career? And I ask that question because I didn't see myself as a leader early on. I think over time I have realized in my own ways I'm a leader, but it took a long time for that. And I can look back now and realize I was finding ways to lead from where I was at that time. So I ask you, what do you wish you had known about leadership, perhaps earlier on? You are leaders now for sure, but what do you wish you'd known about leadership earlier? Maybe we'll try to mix it up a little bit here. Let's check in with Leanne and Risa first on that one.
Yeah, happy to. And you know, what was running through my mind is, if I look back through the various roles I've had in the agency, or I'll even say, you know, outside the agency, volunteer groups or other organizations, the one thing early on that I always felt like leaders had to be able to have the answers. You know, they needed to have all the answers figured out, because people were looking at them to answer the tough questions. And I think there are two things. One of them was recognizing you can lead from wherever you're at, like we just talked about. But the other thing is, it's not about having the answers or being right. It's about how to be effective and convene others, and be okay not having the answers, be okay failing and learning from that, because you're human, and just being genuine. Because a lot of leaders, I'll speak for myself, I definitely don't have all the answers. But I rely and need to be able to be curious and have others help me. So being effective and being willing to ask for help, and not think you have to have it all figured out to be a leader.
I think for me, what I didn't think about early on was the implications of what I did or said or thought about doing. I was thinking about fixing something or doing something or getting a group together, and that is good, I guess. And but there's sometimes unintended consequences for an action or a decision, and I didn't think through that. First, I probably didn't know that there might be, or I certainly didn't think about what they might be that I didn't initially anticipate. So that's sort of something that I don't know that I do a great job now, but at least I try to, more than I did before. You know, stop before making a decision, or, you know, going ahead and, you know, jumping down the road.
So I'll jump in next. These are all good responses. For me, in a word, it's patience, because you know, I know that I get impatient. I want to get things done, and I don't like it when things are not done. And so I had to learn a lot of patience, because it takes.
Thanks. Yeah, I have a couple things, you know, things I wish I would have known earlier in my career. I'm thinking just how incredibly important some other skill sets are to build you up as a leader, apart from maybe your focus area. So, you know, I've known for a while I wanted to work in the environmental sector and in conservation. So I'm thinking back to schooling and how all my focus and dedication was in those realms, but how incredibly important communication skills are, or financial literacy are, to help you be a leader in this field. And along with that, not necessarily courses, but just how dang important connections are, and not in a way as a way to climb the ladder, but just as a way to like be a more effective partner and be a more effective leader. If you can remember and still have good connections from folks you maybe went to high school with, and now you're like, man, they were so good at this. You know, maybe they'd be interested in working together. Or I remember this old coworker from 4 jobs ago who maybe could teach me some of the skills I used to look up to that they had. And just thinking how those connections continue to make you a better and effective leader. And just my last one, it's small, but I really wish I would have known that statistic on women applying for jobs. To be honest, I just learned about 2 years ago that kind of that statistic that women generally feel like they need to have every single requirement in a job description before they apply, as opposed to men who maybe will apply it if they have half. And I think that holds some people back, and I felt like maybe it even held me back. So if I would have known some of those things early, when I learned that, I was like, that was definitely me. And so I think that's important to learn some of those things to remedy kind of your response as you're charging through your career.
Thank you all four panelists for that. That went in so many different directions. I feel like I have follow-ups, but I chase in 4 different directions too. Okay, I want to pause here for a second and again invite questions or prompts in the chat from our audience. I do have another question I'll ask here, but also I have a request of the audience. The question I want to ask the audience is, if you don't have a question, that's fine, but could you share back in the chat a takeaway or something interesting you just heard someone share? We might expand on that a little more. So if you hear something there that means a lot to you, you can also just share that, and we might center a little more on that here. Oh, well, a few questions came in here. Let me check that out. We've got a question from Jimmy here. Do you have a story or a way you can think of where we can help each other take on leadership roles? I think this question is around, do you have an example or an anecdote of how a leader can help another leader, to help them or empower them? What does that look like? Empowering other leaders, perhaps, is another way to put that. What does empowering and encouraging as a leader, another leader, look like to you? And maybe I'll just, since that was a fresh question, whoever wants to address it first, come off of mute.
I'm happy to go first.
Go ahead.
I think this one's that's a really good question, Jimmy, and an important one. I think some ways that you can empower others is to be a good listener and to lift their ideas up. You know, I think about all the meetings we're in, maybe weekly, maybe with your core team or monthly, and just being able to listen to different ideas and repeat them, lift them up, and also give folks a more autonomy or the ability, kind of that space to take the direction they want to take something in with the skill sets that they have. So if you start noticing someone has, you know, is really strong in A, B, and C, kind of opening up that door for them, like, hey, would you be interested in kind of taking it this way, or working on this project, and being able to elevate people's skill sets is really important, and being able to notice that. And not maybe put them in positions where they don't have a certain skill set. I also invite people to participate in decision making. I think where you can is really important, so that those individuals are part of the leadership. They're part of moving an organization or an agency kind of forward. Those are some of my thoughts.
Yeah, I'll take team on with that and add, the other thing that was running through my mind is sometimes it's just simply asking. I can remember years ago, one of my early force supervisors, when I was working as a environmental ID team leader on projects, you know, he said, so what are you going to be when you grow up? And I was like, I thought I was there, you know, and he's like, nah, if you're open and your family is, you can go a lot further. And that's about all he said, which part of me was thinking, is he trying to get rid of me? You know, or, you know, what's going on? But it was planting the seed on, you know, it's okay to look beyond where you're sitting. And it's okay if you're happy where you're at and it doesn't work for your family and you, to stay where you're at and lead from where you're at. But to really just, sometimes it's just asking that simple question. So I think you would be great. I see skills in you. I see attributes. What do you think? Have you thought about this? Because, you know, as human beings, some of us have those large goals. A lot of us don't sometimes think about, you know, I never even thought about being where I'm sitting. It wasn't anywhere in my realm of thinking. It was, you know, until somebody asked me and I was like, really? And then you kind of give it some thought. So sometimes just asking the question.
This is a little bit more geared towards peer sharing or peer communication. And without kind of going overboard, I would suggest meeting as many people, and networking sometimes sounds like a bad word, but meeting as many people whose job you like, who seems to be someone who you would view as a comrade or peer or colleague, and just keep on doing that. At some point in time, you might see that their glasses are crooked and they're about to go, do a speech, and just, if you didn't know them, you wouldn't say, hey, buddy, you got to fix your glasses. But if you know them, they would really, really appreciate it. So kind of preparing for a potential interaction or potential opportunity to share or grow leadership when it doesn't matter yet. So that's a little bit fuzzy, but that's happened to me so many times where I've had an opportunity to ask, say, Leanne, a question I wouldn't have if I hadn't met her before. But since I'd met her before, it'd be really easy for me to call her or email her. And she would at least sort of be familiar with my name or why I was asking her or reaching out at a cold.
So I'll jump in there. It's like two parts to this question. Do you have a story? There are a lot of stories. But the first thing I think any person in a leadership role understands is you don't have a magic wand. You're going to face lots of things, and sometimes they're uncertain, but be with smart people, learn from others. You learn from mistakes, you learn from your own mistakes, you learn from others, and there's a lot of talent out there that I really admire and appreciate those lessons I learned. But also the second part of that is stretch yourself, be willing to take new assignments and new responsibilities on, and so you don't become typecast. That gives you more opportunities in the future too. And I would always suggest that of people.
Right on. Thank you. And thanks for that question, Jimmy. We've got another prompt here in the chat. Would you tell us about a time where you felt like you maybe failed or fell short as a leader, and what you learned perhaps about yourself or learned about others? But what was your leadership lesson in that? So a time where you maybe failed or fell short as a leader, but what did you learn? What was your takeaway about leadership in that scenario? I can see this panelist here thinking, I don't want to push you, but Risa's come off of mute, so we'll pivot to Risa.
Well, I have lots of times, but two big times. I've been fired twice from my job, and they were both significant. I mean, life-changing, in different ways. The first one was a little more straightforward. I was like a peon, and I was working on this big project, and I was, I think, accomplishing more than this one person who was like 3 levels up, and it was embarrassing to him. So he sort of blacklisted me, and I was fired. And at the time, I didn't realize how important allyship is. It's just important to know where you're at in the organization, and just doing what is correct or better or fixing is not necessarily going to do you, there might be implications for you. So that was a big one. And then the second one, I don't want to take too much time, but I was executive director of American Whitewater twice. And the second time I was fired. And it was a lot of things in the environment. And I tried to fix all things that were crumbling around me that weren't necessarily my doing. It was when all of our funding went away during the .com bust. And I tried to fix everything myself because I was really good at that. And the pile of stuff to fix got so high, it just kind of, collapsed on me. Everyone could see it except me. So I was asked to leave because I was just a mess. Huge life-changing experience, because the job was the most important thing I'd ever done in my life. So I recovered from it, and I learned a whole lot about myself and how to be resilient. And I think it's not something I would advise, because you don't want to change your life too much, but you can recover from anything. I recovered from that, and I'm an okay person now, and you just can. So don't worry about it if something that seems devastating, is happening, because you can recover.
That's inspiring. Thank you, Risa. Check in with the other panelists. Leanne, you've come off of mute. I actually have a follow-up question on this one. If the panelists, if you're like, I'll pause, we'll wait for the next one. You don't all have to answer. Anyways, let's check in with Leanne.
Yeah, no, what was running through my mind is I can remember early in my career is when I worked out east as a forest supervisor on a national forest, and just a lot of controversy going on, both within the community I lived. It was very hard on my family. At work, you're all over the newspaper on decisions you've made. And I found myself where I decided, I got stubborn, and I was like, I'm right and they're wrong, working with the constituents, and I quit being effective. And it backfired on me, as you guys can imagine. You have relationships that suffered, the work on the ground suffered, my employees suffered, because I got stubborn and got tunnel visioned on everything happening, instead of being able to step back, take a deep breath, not take it personally, the jabs that were coming, and really try and be open and listen to what I was missing. Because it wasn't about me being right, I quit being effective. So you can be right and till the cows come home, and what good's it gonna do if you can't be effective? So really learning how to not have that redheaded stubbornness come up when you get pushed, and be open and try and figure out what the underlying reasons are why people are, wherever they're positioned, trying to really understand and figure out how to be effective together and working in relationships from that standpoint. And then the other lesson that I'll just say you learned, and I learned it, and I'm very fortunate to have the family I have and the support from my children and my husband, particularly at that time when all my children were still at home, because the family starts suffering. And no matter what you do, people talk about work-life balance. You can get very tunnel vision and forget the other things in your life and not realize the impacts that it can be having on you. So recognizing your own stress levels and how to take care of yourself. The work's always there, but you need to take care of yourself for those around you and for your loved ones. And so I wouldn't say a balance, because things go in streaks, but just how to live and be okay, and learning what it takes for you to stay resilient and to recharge, and don't go through the hard times to try and figure that out from that.
So I'll jump in after Leanne's. That was a great example too, and it made me think of, don't be discouraged, because in doing your job, it's easy for people to get discouraged. You can start thinking about that yourself, and no one cares. You're out there doing your job, you're working hard, and maybe from time to time they don't, but smart people do, and they understand, and you just can't let yourself get into that way of thinking. And in terms of applying for other positions, and you don't get a job, don't worry about it. There'll be other opportunities, they'll come along, they may be even better than you imagine. So my point is, just don't get discouraged. We all do, but it's something to be careful and think about.
Thanks. And I can just add quickly that I was thinking of small failures over reflecting back the last week, last month, and just little things that kind of build up along the way. But really driving home that, it's never too late to say sorry, and it's never too late to address the issue head on, even if it's small, which I think is important. There's just so many instances where maybe I think I got possessive over something, or I didn't respond the way I would have if I had more time, or maybe I was grumpy that day. And then readdress it with that person just to check in. Hey, just so you know, sorry I acted that way, and I recognize it wasn't effective and appropriate, and just, you know, whatever happened, and just kind of being able to connect with that individual or issue that you might be having. I think it's important. Sometimes it's pretty easy to just let it go, right? And but sometimes it's also, there's a lot of value in addressing it head on and putting words to what happened.
Oh, thank you. So what was on my mind here as a follow-up is on this theme. So I think what the four of you just shared is some of those humbling, harder moments in leadership, where you're challenged deeply in a way, and lessons learned from that. And so my follow-up is that acknowledging leadership work can be tiring, humbling, challenging, in several senses. So how do you as a leader sustain yourself and take care of yourself as a leader, both maybe in the short term and in the long term, knowing that leadership work is hard? It's its own muscular work. It's its own heavy work. How do you sustain yourself through the hard times and the good times? What does it look like taking care of yourself as a leader?
So Colter, I'll jump in on that one because I kind of alluded to that in my last comments. And I'd say there's a couple things that I've learned. You heard me mention, for me, I'm very blessed with my family, and I've got a very supporting husband who, he's a good gauge for me, because there's at times he's like, you know what? I'm tired of hearing you talk about work all the time. I think you need to do something different. And you know, so I have that definitely, which I'm very fortunate to have. The other thing I'd say is I surround myself, and I've learned to surround myself with a community of peers. And just, you know, you have to have somebody who you can call up, and sometimes you just need to vent. I mean, we're all human, and leaders are no different. It doesn't matter where you're sitting and where you're leading from. We all have feelings, we all have reactions, we all get frustrated and discouraged, and we have our highs and lows. Be okay with that. Have a community around you. Be it, you know, for me, part of it's my husband, and then I have a community of colleagues that sometimes I can call up and just say, look, I just need to get this out. And then you just nod and tell me I'm right, make me feel better. I don't care, just let me vent a little bit, and have a safe space for that. From that standpoint. And then the third thing I would say is, and it's easier said than done depending on what you're dealing with, because some things are just gnarly, and you have the, you know, the tragic things that happen if you're dealing with things like a fatality, that no matter what you do, some things are just hard and they will change you. They're lifetime changes for you, and having that support system is vital. So how do you shut things off and truly unplug, so to speak? And it's going to vary. For some, it's, you know, the exercise, for running, you know, just taking good physical care of yourself. And if you're struggling with that, be okay to ask for help. And that's the other thing, is you have to reach out and be willing to ask for help, because all of us need it at different times. And we learn from each other. So that community, and not being so proud that you don't ask, and just say, I am struggling, I need help. And that's helped me be resilient and keep in balance. And it's very humbling. And that's an okay thing.
Thank you, Leanne. Go ahead, Risa.
Leanne, that's really wise. I think having a system, or knowing what your system is. So that's the first, you know, or knowing that you need one if you don't feel like it's great, or your BFF is not here right now. So find somebody else who can kind of fill that role. You know, I think I'm lucky to have wise parents, and there's a Japanese word called shikata ganai, and it means like sort of just deal with it, accept what you can't change, and move forward, and learn from the past, apply, don't go back there, but learn, utilize what you've learned because of your past, and go forward. So that's sort of a philosophical thing, but if you can try to practice it, it really is helpful because you just don't get stuck in things that, that happened yesterday that you can't change. And I would advise everyone when you are stressed to go kayaking. It is really, really helpful. That's what I do all the time, and it will cure lots of ills.
Risa, would you share that Japanese word in the chat? I'd like to study it a little more. Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, how do I sustain myself? Thanks for that, Colter. I think one thing that's important is to give myself some grace and acknowledge that I'm not perfect and cannot achieve perfection throughout every single day. And so while it's important to me to strive, I have a high bar to do my best and work very hard, but also, of course, I'm going to make mistakes and those around me are going to make mistakes. And so I try, so that I'm not constantly thinking about all the things I did wrong during the day, I try to actually tell myself, it's okay. And, I'm not perfect. And I think it really helps. And if something does continue to come back, beyond some of those words to myself, that's kind of that situation where it's like, let's address this head on and get some feedback with, whatever it is, the project, the person, and then that way it can also help, close that chapter and move on. And just kind of turning it off. The way I turn it off is by honestly going out and exploring in wilderness with my kids. They are really good reminders about how cool some other things are. The sticks, the rocks, the trees, can kind of bring me back into the moment. And so I always still do that.
So, those things are so important. Being with your loved ones, your family and your friends, taking good care of your health. One I would add is I like to read a lot, and I try to put things into perspective. I read about people's lives that had to deal with so much more than my worst day might have been one of their better days. And so just kind of put things into perspective about what we are dealing with.
Tim, I'd love to pick your brain on your book recommendations. I feel like I'm at an interesting moment here as a moderator. We wanted to be wrapped up at 10 till, so we have about 10 minutes. I'm almost a little fearful to ask a very open-ended question, but I think I will. I think this is just an open-ended question for in that I'd like to just close out with each of you. What's on your heart for people who are emerging leaders in wilderness, wild and scenic rivers, trails, conservation work, those of us who partner to accomplish protecting areas, protecting landscapes, sharing that resource with others. What is your last thought in this moment that you would want to share with an emerging leader to set them up to see themselves as a leader now and a leader in the future as well? So leave that with you for a second here to think about. And I'll turn it over. I see Tim's come off of mute, so take it away, Tim.
So I think really it's strength of character, and it shows itself in times of adversity, because anybody can look good when things are hunky-dory and rosy, but people stand above others during difficult times and work through the disappointments that we all face, or the failures that we talked about, that we all face, setbacks. But just remember that, and I'll leave you with this quote. Martin Luther King said, "The ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy." And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Tim.
I'll offer something. Is to trust yourself, trust your gut, trust your intuition. Even if you're like early in your career, You know what's good and bad. You know what you like and don't like. You know when someone's being mean or not mean. And so please just trust yourself and don't be afraid. There's really nothing to be afraid of. You know, you can be concerned, you can be challenged and all, but don't be afraid, because if you can put that aside, even though that's hard sometimes, you know, you can do anything you want to do. But fear can really kind of mess you up. So if you can just put that in a pocket and move forward and trust in yourself, you'll do fine.
So I'll add, and Kaitlin and a few others have said it, I would say, be you, be genuine. Don't try and think you have to be mimicking or be a leader like anybody else you see. Learn from others, be kind, patient, have some grace for you and others, be curious, and humility goes a long ways on that. And be okay that you're going to try things and you're going to fail. Learn from them, move forward. Failure is a positive. It's an opportunity on that. And as others have said here, you can pick yourself up and have those relationships. Have those people around you, family, friends, loved ones, colleagues, coworkers, whatever works for you. Have that and be there for them, and let them be there for you on that part of it. And I'd also say, Tim said earlier, don't be discouraged. When you're talking about Colter with the question, the natural resources is just tough. It's controversial. You've got a lot of people, if I think about wilderness and wild and scenic rivers just as too, it's values, it's loved, and not everybody's going to agree, and that's okay. Don't be discouraged, don't give up, keep moving forward, and give yourself that grace. As Kaitlin said earlier, because that is a key component there on that. And just keep being you from that standpoint. You're already a leader wherever you're sitting, and it can grow and go whatever direction you desire it to be. And then have fun, enjoy, be happy, laugh at yourself. I'm my greatest source of entertainment most days on that. And just wherever you want to go, do it because you want to do the job. And you want to be in whatever leadership position that is, because you're going to have fun doing it. Maybe not every minute, but do it because you really want to do it, not because someone expects you to. Be true to yourself.
Thanks, Leanne. I laugh at myself all the time. I entertain myself with my own foolishness, so I appreciate that greatly. All right, let's check in with Kaitlin.
Thanks. I want to underscore how important I think what Tim said about how a lot of people can look good in the easy moments, but that those leadership skills are those leaders really shine in the difficult situations, and when you're able to like stop and critically think about what's happening rather than getting wrapped up in the moment is kind of like when people really shine. So I just want to appreciate that, and thank you, Leanne, too, for the, you know, it's good to be yourself and good to laugh at yourself and have fun. And not forgetting that sometimes you can feel like, oh, I need to always look professional or this way, but you can always have fun in the position. I would add that, just going back to our very first question, I do think that you can take all the small moments to be a leader and how important that is. You can be a leader in any position, and I want to drive home that point. And people notice, and it impacts others. And there's so many ways to be a leader from where you are. And the last thing I kind of want to drive home is just to have confidence, be nice to yourself, and build yourself up. Have the confidence in you, in yourself, in your passions, in your skill sets. Because I see there's so many times where folks have just incredible knowledge or incredible skills and are still beating themselves up about other things. And I just think we need to be kinder to ourselves and to recognize that, hey, yeah, I have these skill sets and I'm good at these things, and just really want to drive home to be confident in yourself and be yourself, as Leanne said.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm feeling I was having a good day, but I'm feeling like I'm having a great day right now. You all just helped me feel built up in that, sharing what was on your heart there for leaders in the work that we do. I want to try to wrap up here a little bit. I want to just thank Risa, Tim, Leanne, Kaitlin, for sharing your perspectives on leadership, what it looks like to be a leader, what happens in the hard times, how do you sustain yourself. I admire you all as leaders too. So thanks for sharing with us your work in this field.